a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a ride.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expanding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Erweitere deine Realität. Expanding reality. Motherfuckers out there.
Daniel Bechmann, welcome to this motherfucking show right here. I am so excited that you're joining me. All the ways to find Daniel, this amazing, beautiful man right here, will be located down in the show diggity description. Show description. That's it.
Thank you, Brandon, for having me. I'm very pumped to talk to you today because I love expanding reality and I listen to your show whenever I can find the time. For example, when I walk through the woods with my dogs, I love to listen to your voice and to your interesting guests. I really dig your show and people tune into Brandon's show. Yeah, like you said, my name is Daniel Bechmann. I am from Germany, Bavaria, Germany. I'm 43 years old and I'm the host of Flying Chariots the Rise. And also, I have also another podcast, a German project, which is called Sagenhaft und Sonderbar, which is translated, you can translate it to fabulous and strange, maybe. And we talk about, UFOs there, the paranormal, consciousness, all the crazy stuff. And it's been a wild ride. Since I started the podcast, I get to know a lot of interesting people. I had the chance to talk to a lot of interesting people. Some of them are very well known, like Eric von Däniken, for example, or Avi Loeb. There was a treat to talk to these guys, especially since Eric von Däniken is, I think, 86 already or 87. And yeah, that was a treat to get to know him in person. Also, Avi Loeb, who is very interesting, very scientific, but very interesting. But I'm not only into the famous guys. I talk to book authors, normal people who tell me their stories, the paranormal experiences, or what they found out, maybe. Some people talk about UFO sightings, UFO abductions, about we talked about the inner earth, reptilians and whatnot, reptiloids. It's crazy, but it's cool and I love it.
Well, I gotta say, man, the work that you do is fascinating and awesome. And we met, you invited me on. We had a wonderful episode, which it will be linked down in the show description. So my guest spot over there will be linked. But also, dude, you and I have been doing a co-host thing, which is really cool. That Aginost episode that we had was super fucking awesome, man. Talking about the Nazi crafts and Germany's Roswell and all this kind of shit, dude. You do, like I said, some amazing work. So again, Flying Chariots The Rise will be located down below. So those are a few Facebook there and all the other ways to find you, dude. So there's so much to cover here with you. And since you and I have been hanging out, I've just been blown away with the amount of information that comes out of that side of the world that I had no idea about, and blame it on our ignorance, only studying, Roswell for the past 20 years and wanting to hear what new people have to say about the same shit. But I find it really interesting, the things that you've introduced me to, which is why I'm grateful as a brother to introduce you to the audience here and to let them know the man behind sort of this co-host thing that we've been doing, but also to let them know about some crazy cool shit that you've been telling me about, not only your part of the world, but other parts of the world that I've never even heard of. So guys, you're in for a real treat on this one. Daniel Bechmann, it's so cool to see you, man. So where do you want to start, man?
Well, if you want, I can start maybe with my story, because I have experience with the UFO too, and that was back in 1996 when I was only 16 years old. Yeah, that's where my story, my journey essentially begins. Well, I had an experience earlier, but I can talk about that a little bit later in the show. Yeah, 1996. It was summer, and my back then girlfriend and I decided to sleep in a tent in the garden in front of her house. Unfortunately, a schoolmate joined us. His name is David, I remember that. But he will become important in the story later on. At some point in the night, we were laying on a blanket in front of the tent, gazing at the sky, and suddenly our schoolmate, he jumped up and he was screaming, look, what's that? Look in the sky. And we turned our eyes to the sky, and it took a moment to see what he meant. And then we saw it. It was a large, motionless triangle in the sky. And it didn't move an inch. It was just standing there, and it was very impressive because it appeared to be very close. It wasn't really big, but it appeared to be very close. And I cannot tell you how large it was, but because back then I didn't really pay much attention because I was quite startled from what we saw. But it was clearly recognizable as a triangle, and it was dark. I don't know if it was black or blue, something like that. It was dark. It was not shiny at all. In the center, there was a light that didn't blink. It only glowed. It only had the lights on, so to speak. And there was no sound. I remember that. There was no sound whatsoever. And you couldn't detect any propulsion system. So I don't know how it moved, but it did. We observed the triangle for a while. And suddenly it made a movement from right to left or left to right, doesn't matter, in a straight line. And I would estimate it covered the distance of about 2 football fields. So, and it happens so fast that it was barely, you could barely see it with the naked eye. We were completely startled, and we looked at each other, and then it made another movement. This time it was a kind of a zigzag or a C pattern, and it also happened in the fraction of a second. So we were blown away by what we saw, and we were scared. And when the second movement happened, we ran inside the house. We closed the doors, we closed the windows, we closed the blinds, the curtains, we closed everything, and we even closed our eyes, I think. And didn't look out the window again that night. We weren't even talking much about it. We talked about it for a few minutes, and then we ended the topic. We didn't discuss it throughout the whole night, but it was very interesting, and it's stuck with me ever since.
It's wild, and it reminds me of the story you were telling me about when you were 10 years old, if you don't mind, that breathing ghost thing, dude.
Oh, damn.
Please,
yeah.
It seems like you're a magnet for this kind of stuff.
I want to add to the first story, to the UFO story, that I really wish that back then girlfriend later became my wife. And we never talked about it to this day. Now she's my ex-wife. She's my ex-wife now, but we have a good understanding. We like each other, and we have kids together. They already left the house. They're adults. But we've never talked about it. And I'm really curious to ask her about the incident, if she still remember, if she even care, what she thinks about it now, because she never talked to me about it. And I don't know where the back then friend is, our colleague. I don't know where he is these days. I would love to talk to him too, and listen to his side of the story. But like I said, there was another experience when I was only 10 years old. I was laying in my bed in my room. My parents sent me to bed, and I was listening to a cassette, to cassette tapes with my Walkman. It was a red Walkman. I know that. I remember that. And it was a He-Man cassette, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It's very important to add that to the story because I love He-Man. Fucking love He-Man, man. And when the cassette was over, the story was over, I set the device aside and I tried to sleep. However, I wasn't tired. So I stared at the ceiling, and some stuff went through my mind, various things. And at the foot of the bed, there was my window hidden by the sloping ceiling, but I could clearly see the bright light, the bright, bluish light of the moon shining onto the wardrobe opposite the window. And at some point, I became aware of of a strange sound that was very unfamiliar to me. It was a very strange sound, and you know that in your house, you know all the sounds, you know everything, and if something changes, your senses sharpen, and then you listen closely. And I listened closely, and I recognized that it was a breathing noise. Someone was breathing in my room, and I was like, "What the fuck, man? Someone's breathing," and it's not me. It was a very calm, almost breathing, almost as if someone else in the room were sleeping, peacefully sleeping, deep breathing, long breath. And yeah, it couldn't be something else. There was nothing in my room, no TV, no stereo, nothing. Somebody was fucking breathing in my room, man, and I was scared to shit.
Well, it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
So what do you think it was?
Man, since there was only me, and the sound was coming from the corner of where my wardrobe was, and I hid under my blanket, and occasionally I was peeking out, and every few minutes I was peeking out, and I listened into the night if the breathing was still there, and it was there, until I eventually fell asleep, and I tried to get up and run to the door and maybe go to my parents, but I was scared first of their reaction. When I say I have somebody's breathing in my room, I knew my father. I think he he would say something like, "Yeah, fuck off," and I was scared. Second of all, I was scared. I was very scared. I was very scared what would happen if I get up from the bed. Boogeyman below the bed, grabbing me by my foot, pulling me under the bed, something like that. I was like 9 or 10, like I said. Yeah, you have thoughts like that. I was very scared. So I didn't get up, and I fell asleep. And next day I told my best friend about it, who was my neighbor, and he laughed at me. He said, "You're an idiot." And it took me a few days to tell my mother about what has happened in my room. And when I told her, she said something crazy. It was not the response I expected. She told me that I shouldn't be afraid. In that room, my great-grandmother has passed away, and she was a very kind of a woman. And yeah, maybe it was her. Don't be afraid. Oh. Don't be afraid, dude, she said. Maybe it's her, but she would never harm you. Yeah, that's not what you want to hear when you're 9 or 10 years old.
No, the ghost exists. It's probably your grandma, which maybe had notoriously bad breath, and she's over there trying to white noise you to sleep. That's awful. That's crazily terrifying, dude. How old was that house?
Actually, when I was 9 or 10, that house, I was born in 1980. My father and my grandfather built this house with their own hands. It was something 70. It was not old when that happened. So maybe 10, 15 years, something like that. Damn. If I would guess. Yeah.
Just long enough for great grandma to die in and then haunt you.
Yeah.
Damn, dude. That's rough.
You bitch. No.
Thanks a lot.
I never seen her. I don't know who she was, obviously, but yeah, my mother said she was a nice person. So yeah. The craziest thing is, I don't know what it was, but for a very long time, I have no recollection of the nights following that one night in that room. I do not remember how the subsequent nights unfolded. Whether I was scared or not, or if I even slept in that room, I don't know. I can't remember. I don't have no recollection of the nights after that in that room. That is crazy. I remember what I did throughout the days, and I remember that I was a lot of times I was in my room and I played and I did my homework and stuff like that. But I have no recollection of the nights after that night. I don't know if I was lying in my bed scared or slept peacefully. I don't know. I have no idea what happened throughout the nights in that room.
It's really bizarre. Yeah, maybe she had some sort of deal on the other side where she could like sort of hop in your body and run around and do whatever she wanted for like a week after you hear the breathing. Like some weird shit, probably some fuckery kind of a thing. I don't know, man. It's really odd. Do you get a weird sense about it?
Yes. it's crazy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I from 9 to 13, I suffered from severe sleep paralysis, and I really don't know if that has something to do with it. Maybe I was in a strange state of sleep paralysis, because you might know it, and many of your listeners also might know that when you have sleep paralysis, you can have hallucinations, and not only visual hallucinations, but you can hear things, and you even can have the sense of somebody's touching you, and those can be very strange. So I don't know, maybe something like that happened to me, because like I said, I suffered from severe cases of sleep paralysis from 9 to 13, many nights.
And you've experienced paranormal in your house. Like, how recently has paranormal gone on around you?
Maybe I just didn't notice it, but in the house where I live now, my wife and me, we experienced something strange, let's say 8 or 9 years ago, when we heard steps coming from upstairs for a few weeks in a row. Every night, almost the same time, we heard very heavy steps coming from upstairs, and we went upstairs and we looked everything, nothing. And we even sent the dog upstairs. They also sensed nothing. I don't know what that was, but that was gone away someday, and never happened again after that. And I remember two nights when in the one night I stood up here from my desk, and I went to the kitchen to have a glass of water before I went to bed, and it was 1 or 2 in the night. And I opened the kitchen door, turned on the light, and when I looked at the sink, I saw this little knife laying on the sink, and it turned like a compass needle and suddenly stopped. Boom. So first I thought, because I'm a skeptic, right? I'm a skeptic. In my German podcast, a lot of people don't like me because I'm a skeptic, and I need proof. I believe that everything is possible, but I would like to have some proof too. So I thought, okay, maybe it was the window, maybe air or something, or from opening the door, but the door was, I don't know, 3 or 4 meters, the door is away from the sink. So it wasn't the door. Windows were closed. Then I thought maybe it was a mouse. A mouse was on the sink, and when I turned the light, it ran away and turned the knife. But the knife fucking stopped. It was turned slowly, like a compass needle. So it wasn't propelled by the mouse running away. It turned slowly and then stopped. So that was crazy. But I haven't thought much about it since then. Man, why break your head over things you can't explain, right? And another night, few weeks after, I think, same scenario. I got up from podcasting, went upstairs to the bathroom, turned the key around. That's what I always do because I have kids, and this is muscle memory, because you want to have a little bit of peace when you go to the bathroom. And I was washing my hand in the sink, and I saw that the door handle went down like this, slowly, and up again. And we have this house is from 1860 or something like that, and we have those original doors are still installed. Old doors with old handles and with big springs inside. So if you pull the door handle down and let go, it goes snap with a loud click. And yeah, I thought, who was that? First I thought maybe the cat jumped on the door handle, but then we would hear that loud click when it let go. But immediately went to the door, turned the key around, opened the door, and called my daughter and said, do you have to go to the toilet? But no response. I went to her room. She was laying in her bed, sleeping sound, snoring. And I went to my stepson's room. He's also sleeping, and my wife was also sleeping. So I don't know what happened, there, but it freaked me out a little bit, but just a little bit. I was already living in that house for about 10 years when that happened. And I said to myself, whatever it is, and if there's something, a spirit or something playing tricks on me, I live with it now for 10 years plus. Fuck it. I don't care. As long as it's not harming me in any way, just playing some tricks on me, I don't care.
Yeah, if you're not being poltergeisted out of your bed or finding scratches or anything, if every now and then it just sort of reminds you that it cares about you by jiggling a handle, I suppose, then, I mean, yeah, in retrospect, if we're talking comparatively, sure. Wow.
Yeah, that was crazy, man. I tell you that.
Crazy.
I had this, I don't know if we already talked about it, maybe when we had a talk for my channel, but this was one of 3 things that happened, and after that, nothing happened. The last thing that happened was when I saw this strange, let's call it shadow figure. I was about to go to bed. It was late, also 1 or 2 in the night, or maybe even later. Could be 3. There's something to 3 o'clock, people say, no? Right? I don't know what, I can't remember, but something is about that time. So I was about to go upstairs, and we have this long hallway. And at the end of this hallway, I saw a strange, a shadow. I recognized a shadow when I was looking, what's that? And it appeared to me as humanoid. I saw no eyes, I saw no arms, no legs or so, but it was humanoid, a humanoid shadow. And it scared me. And I went upstairs, went to bed, and when my back touched the mattress, it was like click, and I woke up. And I was confused, and I thought, man, was I sleeping? Was I dreaming? Or did that really happen? Took me a few minutes to realize that I was in bed already for an hour or so. And but it felt as real as we're talking to each other right now. This is how real it felt. It was as if it really happened. I don't know if it was some kind of, let's say, astral travel or something like that. I don't practice that. I don't know how to do it, but maybe it was something like that. But it was, it felt very real. And it scared me.
It almost feels sometimes in this reality that you could wake up from it in any moment, like you just said, and you're really like asleep in some other completely different reality, that when you wake up, you realize that this was a dream. It's almost like this place, you continue to sort of dream deliberately every single time, or that you're sort of bound to this reality when that body sleeps, and vice versa. When this body sleeps, you're active in that one, and maybe that's what this crossover is that you're really acting in 2 capacities. It's like they say, you know, this idea that consciousness never rests, right? Your body needs rest, but your consciousness doesn't. It just kind of zips off and does whatever. Well, that kind of leaves open a lot for interpretation, right? So what happens? Like, does something hop in me? Do I get an upgrade every night? Do I like just achieve some sort of level of awareness in the dream every night so that a higher version of me can wake up in a new one every day, kind of a thing? And then you talk about like this tampering with your dreams and with your body, this sleep paralysis kind of a deal where you sort of are your consciousness lagging in getting back in the body, but your body's aware that it's a body and it needs to be animated, but it can't because the soul or whatever, you know, the animating force is off somewhere, just kind of stuck in traffic and on its way, or still battling some dope demon in another realm, and then it'll hop on in a second. And that's sort of this time period. But there's so many speculative ideas about this. And like you, I don't practice astral travel as well. And I haven't had a triangle craft or poltergeist craft, events or anything like that. But I, like you, am a skeptic. I, like you, also feel that everything is possible. We line so much in the way that we talk about things because we're excited about all of it. It's just, I want to see it. You know what I mean? So to that point, man, I'm, like I said earlier, you know, a shitload of stuff about that part of the world. And so I'm curious about some of the superstitions, legends, and things like that in Germany. Like, tell us about some stuff that, you know, we don't know about Germany. And we've heard a lot. Usually it has to do with a dude in a little mustache, but there's so much more that country has to offer. And its history is fascinating in some degrees. So talk to us more about what Germany has to offer, except for Hitler.
Yes, I would love to. I love the topic. But let me add something to what you just said. You said something interesting. When we sleep, our mind goes to God knows where. I heard that very interesting podcast not too long ago, but I do not remember which podcast it was, unfortunately, and I can't find it since then. I heard this woman say she's convinced that when we sleep, we go home. We go into our reality. This is the reality where we go when we sleep. We are this here. We are visiting this here, where we at right now. This is not the reality. So when we sleep, we go home. And she said, "Do you know the feeling when you're daydreaming? When you just standing there staring holes in the air, and you're gone for 10 seconds or what, and your mind is completely empty. Where are you in that moment?" She said. "Where are you? Right in that moment, where are you? When you're daydreaming, when you're just staring, and somebody's standing and tipping on your shoulder and says, hey, what's wrong? What's wrong? Where are you in that moment?" She said, "You're going home for a second. You're going home where you come from. Your mind is going home. This is not the reality." And I don't know if I want to believe that, but I love the thought, to be honest. I really do love the thought that this is not the reality. This is just something that is created by someone, something, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But I love the thought.
I'm somewhere with you on it as well. Of course, that sounds dope as shit, right? Like that idea of Bashar saying that you never leave heaven, but you dream that you do. And in this case, to what you're saying there confirms that in that sense that you're going home when you're not here. So the only place to go is home. But then when you are not at home, you're visiting here, meaning that you're dreaming from home to here. So it is interesting when you look at it from that perspective, and I, like you, agree that it's a nice sentiment, and I would love to embody that as well. There's some interesting observations of mine that counter, I guess, the seamless integration of that fact into my conscious awareness, you know what I mean? Like I would like to remember it when I'm daydreaming, and instead of like whatever I'm doing to blank out, I run home real quick. I'd like to know these touch-in points and what that is and what this is at a deeper level. I think that it would, I mean, like anyone, it would help you navigate the game better. It would help you enjoy this place and live it to your fullest a little bit better if you're aware of like what this place really is. And like with conversations like this, with the shows you do and with ideas like that specifically, this is where we expand those, I guess, realms of what's possible, where you're sitting here saying, well, what if it is just a damn dream? And, you know, this is basically like a game, right, that you're playing. The issue is that it feels so fucking real, and there's a bunch of shit here we don't like. And so it's like, what's the point of the game if a lot of it sucks, you know, to a large degree?
That's true. That's true. What's the point of the game? Think about, or I thought about it a lot, and I think people talk about the meaning of life. I don't think there is a real meaning. Just make the best of it for yourself. And the only use is that it's for yourself, that you feel good. And maybe when you die with a good feeling. But I don't think there's a real meaning. I don't think there is something that you have to achieve to feed some kind of process up there, wherever there is. So yeah, but I want to add something else before we get into legends and superstitions. Sorry, guys.
No, I love it. No, this is a conversation. This is how this happens. These little side roads always take us to the most fascinating place. So I will not allow you to apologize for it, sir.
Yeah, something else you said made me think about this guy here in Germany. This is a scientist here in Germany who's very well known. His name is Walter von Lucadou, Dr. Walter von Lucadou. Pretty well known here, like I said. He researches paranormal phenomena, and he has debunked many of these alleged phenomena as entirely natural causes. Often it is like that. However, sometimes there are things that are difficult to explain, especially when objects seem to move or on their own, or pictures fall from the wall, stuff like that. Sometimes people levitate. I heard stories about people levitating. That's interesting. And Dr. von Lucadou believes that these occurrences often happen to young people going through puberty or facing challenging psychological situations in their life. Like, imagine now we're adults, we're grown up, and imagine being 15 years old and your parents separate, or being 15 years old, your grandfather that you love died, or one of your parents, or brother, whatever, or you lose a leg, well, whatever, traumatic stuff. So he thinks in these stages of life or situations, stressful situations, he's convinced that energy can materialize from the inside out, potentially triggering such phenomena. Of course, there's much. The story is very complex. He can explain it very well. I can't. Sorry. I just can give you a very short version of it. That's his theory, that in stressful situations like that, energy can materialize and can move things and sometimes create noise, maybe. And that's an interesting thought, because if you look at stories of haunted houses, not always, all the ghost hunters are screaming now and picking up the forks already, but it's often, and not only young people in this stressful stage of their life, but sometimes older people too, who are at the end of their life. But yeah, we have a lot of stories about haunted houses where kids are involved. Kids, teenagers are involved when it comes to paranormal cases, poltergeist activities, stuff like that. Often, not always, kids, teenagers and stuff, or elderly people at the end of their life are involved. And this is why I like the idea, because you can make out a pattern. If you really look for the pattern, you can see a pattern.
It's interesting in the sense that now you think that you just want to take your nephew, ghost hunting with you because you're going to have better odds than just a bunch of, like a sausage fest, with a bunch of cameras that are in their middle-aged dudes or whatever that are running around with the Discovery film crew. It's interesting to note the time. And then it's also, whenever you talk about this powerful explosion coming out around the time that they're around sexual maturity, which is puberty, then also this in the comics, and yeah, I'm talking about comics, guys, it all comes back to that. That's when, the X-Men got their powers, is around the time that they hit puberty, and that's about the time that Scott Summers had to wear glasses in high school because he didn't know he was turning into Cyclops and how to deal with it and shit. And so it is around that time of sexual maturity, which is interesting as well in these young adults. Another thing, too, that stressful situations, as you said, yes, back to comics again, ladies and gentlemen, but we're going to give it to DC for a minute. How Superman got his powers or realized that he was powerful was around that age of maturity in a stressful situation. He was like running or something like that. I think he was sad, a few depictions about it. But either way, he got his powers or realized them, this inner power that then was propelled outward to be a superpower after harnessed after these really stressful situations. So it's interesting that you talk about this, and in conjunction too, when we talk about how this is an energy harvesting place and that we're like little batteries. Maybe that there's some of us, or maybe this is a period of time where we're all upgrading or upgraded, and now our power sources are, I don't know, going off a little bit. Maybe they're kind of going haywire, or maybe there's some sort of bloodline thing to this, where a few of us at some point in our lives maybe get these crazy emanations of energy in some form. They'd write it up as a superpower in a comic book, but really like it makes Wi-Fi signals go down, it turns lights out and shit like that. And you've heard of people turning street lights off and stuff. Usually teenagers is who do this. And that's interesting that you point out the age group. And then also the fact that old people, do you think it's like you said, because they're so close to death and that there's really a thinning of the veil so much more with them?
I think often people are very cool with the thought that they are dead soon. It sounds hard, but you know what I mean. But sometimes people do not want to die, and they clinch on their life like to the last breath, literally. And maybe with those people who really do not want to go, and maybe are sick already, there's such a deep inner fear that stuff like that occurs. I think so. I really do think so. And yeah, I am there. But still, there's haunted mansions where cameras have recorded such phenomena, and there was not one person present. We have to keep that in mind too. Nevertheless, I believe that humans can, to a large extent, trigger such things, or as mentioned, open their third eye, so to speak, to discover these phenomena. I remember this Russian woman. It was in the 70s or 80s. Maybe someone has the name. Maybe you have the name. The name I can't remember the name right now. I talked about her a few days ago, and she discovered her. She was pretty famous when it all happened. 70s, 80s. I don't know. 80s. I think in the 80s. I don't remember the name, man. Sorry, but she had these strange powers which she can move things, and scientists brought her in and made experiments with her. So they had this glass thing that they put over matches, and she was able to move matches. She was moving her hands like this over the glass, and it was so exhausting for her to move a little match that she tried it for, I don't know, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, and she moved it a little bit, and then she had to rest for 2 or 3 hours before she could make the next test. So that's how exhausting it was. But long story short, she discovered her psi powers when she was fighting with her husband. And she sat on a table, and her husband, he came in, I think, and they had a big fight, and she was very angry. And she got up and opened the door. And when she opened the door to go outside or inside the room, I don't remember. Something fell from the wall, and it was not from the wind, from the door or so. She moved, and she knew that was me. I moved it. My anger, so to speak, I was so angry that my energy bundled and moved this object. And that's how she discovered, and that's when she started experimenting, moving things and stuff. And she did. And yeah, she was pretty famous back then for moving objects. Yeah.
But it's interesting that there's something to the component of anger, like that passion or this anger. You need to be sort of shaken into this survival sort of mode to just freak out and then unleash these powers. Like, what's up with that? It's sort of like, do you think it has to do with like the Kundalini or anything like that?
Could be. Kundalini, very interesting. I had a guest talking about Kundalini. But when we had the episode, I didn't realize what interesting topic it was. But I think that anger, especially anger, is a very powerful emotion. Very, very powerful. And hate it or love it, what I say now, but I think that anger is the most powerful emotion. It's more powerful than love. I mean, love is also powerful, right? Love can change so much, and if you love someone, it's very I don't know how to put it in words, but you know what I mean. Love is very strong, but I think anger is the stronger emotion. It's not the better emotion, but it's a stronger emotion. And I do believe if you're very angry, that energy really can build up more. Because love, if you love someone or you fall in love with someone, it happens slowly. And then you're in love with someone, and then first you like someone, then you're in love, and then you love someone throughout the month or years, and then you love each other. And love goes away. Everybody knows that love vanishes a little bit throughout the years. If you with a person for many years, a little bit of the love goes away, right? It is what it is. We can take that as a fact, but not always. But it is what it is. But anger explodes in a second. Like you see something and what the fuck? The dog shit on the floor. Fuck you. Let me kill that fucker. And this is why anger is such a strong emotion. And I think, things like that happen when you're angry or when you very scared. So yeah.
Yeah, and this is the idea behind the adrenochrome and all this kind of nasty shit that they're talking about terrifying children, and that's how they get the best harvest. And same thing with this energetic idea that you're just a battery for some Illush farm, right? You're a component in this Illush farm that really, like, the more terrified or the more stressed out you are or worried or any of those things, you're committing that version of energy to the system, and that's the most palpable to continue to run the system, which is fascinating. I mean, it's a shit. It's unfortunate, I think, from our perspective, I suppose, that's, you know, the way that it's calibrated to run, you know, and calibrated to spit energy out or to have the energy be induced. It's just a weird fucking place, man. And I'm glad you talked about Dr. Walter there, because I wanted to discuss him a little bit with you as well. And it's just a fascinating folks that you find out there, like I said, with the stories that you have that we don't have access to.
Yeah, he's very interesting, and I think he speaks a pretty good English. Maybe you can invite him. What I was about to say, all these psi powers, let's call it psi powers. I think if we only knew how to concentrate our energy on our free will, we would be able to do things that early people were able to. I believe that. I believe that people, maybe hundreds and thousands years ago, were able to do all these things just by wanting to do them. I really do think. I believe we already discussed this matter, you and I, where we talked about the idea. And man, I'm going off topic now. I want to talk about superstition, but we talk about it later.
We'll come back. I got it written down. Please go where you want to go.
Yeah, think about, comes to my mind is the pyramids. Think about the pyramids worldwide, not only the Egyptian pyramids. Consider structures created in times when there were only, let's look at Egypt. Copper tools were available. Copper tools or even less. Yeah. And now one has to examine how precisely the stones were placed on top of each other and how some things are fucking perfectly angled and polished. Also polished. Polish that motherfucker. It's not that easy with the things you have to do it. Can all of that be explained by very good craftsmanship? I don't think so. You know, I don't think so. I believe that these early humans knew or or possessed something that we have lost. Alternatively, they might have maybe they had assistance from external sources. People believe that that's also a possibility. Of course, this might explain the keen interest in the stars that some civilizations on Earth had at a very early stage. But
what if we're the dumb ones? And really, like, it's a case of entropy, as we see in a lot of structures, is just that we have gotten dumber, though it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, to where the really intelligent people are kind of quiet about it and maybe are a little passive, but the ones who are raving lunatics are the ones that are raving and loud and the loudest about it, and one would say probably running the show here. So it's interesting that it seems to me, in a lot of other examples of that, especially when you're talking global civilizations like that a high technology and therefore a high understanding of what it was like to work with those materials, what the Earth had to offer, what those technologies could do. I think they were doing a lot with sound and frequency, which I know you've talked about. So it's a fascinating thing to think how the story goes with us, because how I see everything in our current time is a complete inversion, damn near a complete inversion of reality. And so whenever they say human was like this, and I say they in air quotes, the lizard turds kind of running the show here, the ones presenting the information as fact is how I'll put it. I don't think they're really running shit. But if you look back and they're saying, hey, this is how things were, that's where I sort of go, well, if you flip that on its head, then things look a lot more interesting and look a lot more accurate to what we see here as a de-evolved species, rather than one that is on the rise and at our technological peak. I think we're attempting to rediscover that technology and doing a shit job at it, honestly. Or it's been discovered and the real shit's being hidden from us by giving us this cardboard copy of nonsense.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm very sure that people back then could do all that stuff. Some scientists, not all scientists, of course, you always have to mention that. There's scientists out there that are sure that our pineal gland was lot of bigger back then, like double the size or even more. And yeah, what could that have to do with it? That's very interesting too. Also, very, very interesting.
It's so fascinating. And then when you talk about just structure of reality, so if they're saying that it's a ball, okay, I can kind of look at that it's probably not. If they're saying that it works like this, I can probably look backwards from that and literally reverse engineer. You go from the points that they're telling you things are at, and then just turn around and look the other direction and go that way. And it's really interesting, again, when you sort of start doing that, even to history or his story, because we know the victors are the ones that get to tell that tale. And that's all it is. It's just a story. And a lot of it does not match our observation of reality, especially some of the stuff they're finding buried underground, or these buildings that go stories underground that have looked like, especially in old photos, that they've been excavated, but they'll find these things today. You dig down to fix a sewer line, and then all of a sudden you realize that there's a stoop with windows and doors, and it's just been filled in with the street. It's not even street levels, been the second floor. It's just interesting when you start looking at this stuff and what this place may be, and that maybe there's these resets that occur here, that where the technology was in a different place, and then they flood the place out with mud, and then whatever's left over gets its crack at it, but it's a step down, like a massive step down. And then they flood the bitch out with mud again, and the pyramids just happen to stick around because they were built really well by the first motherfuckers that knew what they were doing, not this step down society in which we find ourselves. And then some people talk about this being like after the tribulation, like that we've already fucked up with Jesus. He's already come and gone. And that earlier civilization was building all the dope temples and shit. That's done. Like, we're done with that, you know? It's just weird.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Talking about Tartaria, for example, yeah.
Yeah. You're a kind of close. You're way closer to it than we are. I mean, what do you think of all that stuff?
It's possibility. I do believe that it existed. And I do believe that civilizations existed on planet Earth maybe way before the dinosaurs came up. And I really do believe. I mean, we don't have proof, right? Since it's very, very fucking long ago and nothing is left. And yeah. And we forgot. People say we simply forgot. Because we're getting dumber and dumber, of course. Let me take a little side road here. The younger generation is growing up in a virtual environment. I see it, my stepson, my youngest daughter was 12. My older kids are 21, 23. They also grew up with cell phones and PlayStation and I don't know, fuck me. I had a fucking Game Boy when I was 18 or 19 years old, and I love to play Pokemon Yellow, but I love to go outside and do fucking shit outside. I love to play Ninja in the woods and shit like that, you know?
I still do that, yeah.
I don't want to rant about younger people because they're the last ones who are, it's not their fault. I had my first cell phone when I was 18 years old. It was 1998. Something around that. It was a Nokia. It was a fucking brick. And I also loved it. But the only thing we could do on the thing was standing it. Could it send an SMS back then? I don't know. It could send SMS.
I think it did text. I can't remember, but it had that snake game on it.
Yeah, Snake. It was Nokia 5110 or something. I don't know. It was. I loved it. I was proud of my fucking cell phone, but it didn't ring because nobody was calling me because it was very expensive. So most of the time I left it at home. But I had it. I had my first cell phone when I was 18. That was my message. Today the kids, they grow up with it. And for them it's quite normal that they always have the latest cell phone and that there is an innovation in this area every year or sometimes every few months. The problem is that many have lost the ability for a real interaction with each other. Like I said, it's not a rant about the youngsters. It's not their fault, of course. They are getting drawn and sucked into it by someone who does it on purpose. That's my opinion, my very own opinion.
I don't disagree with you at all.
I can observe it myself in my environment. Of course, the kids still meet in real life, but the conversations, they are different. and no longer as intense as it was when I was young. This is what I observe. I've noticed that these conversations, maybe at the train station, at the bus stop, something like that, or even here at home with my stepson when his buddies are here, I've noticed that these conversations are very superficial. Let's call it superficial sometimes. They're not talking about deep shit, and they don't go deep on, like you and I do. We're talking about great things, and even if it's just a UFO talk, nuts and bolts talk, I never heard these guys talking about nice book or hey, have you seen this? They're talking about, hey, my fucking Nike Airs, and look at I bought this new cell phone, and look at my, why, you know? But like I said, it's not their fault. You always have to point it out. Yeah, because many simply no longer don't have any deep thoughts because they are distracted by all the virtual temptations around them. They get drawn in, sucked into it. And so I think it's difficult that the great thinkers and people with the courage to think crazy that the world needs will grow out of such a generation. I think this is my message. The the ever advancing technology challenges the developers, but takes away the consumers' own thinking and turns them into empty shells that simply consume and lose their focus for their environment and the important things to a large extent. So yeah, in the end, it was a rant. Sorry, guys, but this is my opinion on what was happening around us these days. I think it's crazy. I think it's fucking crazy. I'm not bashing young people. Like I said, not their fault. We observe it from a completely different perspective because we grew up completely different. When I was at the bus stop, back then, before I went to school, maybe 5th, 6th, 7th grade, we had interesting talks. I remember interesting talks about stuff that is going on. Man, I remember sitting when I was 12 or so with my best friend and neighbor sitting in a box in his garden, playing a spaceship, talking about or philosophizing about what the world would look like. And it was 1992. We were discussing how the world would look like in the year 2000. We imagined flying cars and supercomputers, stuff like that. These were all talks, man. Yeah. Sorry. Please say something.
Don't be. I love a good get off my lawn. This place was orange groves as far as the eye could see, kind of rant. I love that, man. It's a beautiful sentiment as well because you've only had 2 more summers than I have. So I'm right behind you here as far as like my disdain for what's going on here. But you and I were born in this dope ass middle window between generations, or almost as like this pocket that we exist in, to where we did have the fresh air and outside, and we remember our sun being a little bit different. And then also we have a foot in the technology, a little bit later on in life, to where we did have childhoods, which was great. We were outside like you, Ninja in the Forest, absolutely. Our nephews, I think 6 and 4, somewhere around in there, they came over for Thanksgiving. It's my brother's adopted kids. And what's interesting about them being on iPads and shit all the time, I'm going to rant with you here, buddy, is that it's zapped their imagination, which is fascinating because you and I growing up, I think that when we watched cartoons, it inspired our imagination. And then we went outside and like built forts and we like played He-Man and we did that shit. We took it out and did our own thing. But now it's interesting to see that they don't. I noticed it with our little ones. Like I was running around in our field with them and like we picked up sticks and we pretended they were swords and they had a real tough time with it. I'm like, guys, this is imagination. We're having fun. And then eventually it didn't take them long at all. There's an automatic lane that there's a spirit in there that wants to play and wants to do that. But there's this odd facade that society has seemed to give kids and for them to wear that if it's not digital, it's not valuable. And it's just interesting also because it seems that they've been disempowered to lead their own imaginations forward, that if it's not handed to them in the form of here's how you consume content or here's what's entertaining, here's a valuable use of your time, because that's sometimes, and I don't have kids, so I don't have a dog in any fight when it comes to this. I don't believe in dog fighting at all, actually. So, the people that hand their kids an iPad and stuff, well, that's how they're spending time. So if it is interesting, the point that you bring up, Daniel, and I don't think that it's a weird one to go on at all. I'm grateful for your rant, sir. Yeah. But the kids did great after that. They were playing, they were doing all kinds of shit. Our nephew, actually one of the funniest fucking things ever. My wife and I still crack up about this. Our little nephew, this little dude Sullivan, and he'll hear this when he's older and probably love it. I convinced them that our tree over here spit out magic acorns, but only the ones that were golden. So there are some at different stages, right? And so if you could find a golden one, right? And I showed them the difference. I'm like, no, all these are whatever, but this is a magic one. So then they're on the hunt. So we were out here playing in the backyard, pretty far away from him. He goes and finds one of these things and runs it over to us, saying that he found the most special acorn ever. He's touting this from about 20 feet away. He's running. He gets right to our feet, dude, and drops the damn thing and looks down I don't know, it felt like forever, but we were cracking up because he never found the most sacred acorn ever. And so I'm sitting here like, try not to like make this kid feel bad, which he didn't. He just like stared at the damn ground like, oh my God, I just lost the most sacred acorn ever. But he was in it, his imagination. I go, well, great. Now you planted it here and then it'll grow into the most beautiful tree ever, right? And that kind of whatever. But we were dying laughing at his excitement because his imagination was kicking. And that's not something that, I don't know, based on what I've heard, that's just not something they do a lot of. So it was really cool.
Yeah. Do you remember the times when you were outside playing? Like I said, I was a ninja all the time with my best friend. But do you remember when you were really into it? Like really, you've been that fucking ninja, and like your surroundings even changed. It's like reading a fucking good book these days. Now I wish I could read like I did read books 20 years ago. I was into Perry Rhodan. Do you know Perry Rhodan?
No.
It's a science fiction novel, started 1961, I think, 61, and it's going on to this day. And it's this little magazines that you can buy for $1 or so in the store, and it became so famous that they printed big books with a lot of stories in it, and it's an ongoing story. It's very, very famous around the globe, and I fell in love with Perry Rhodan. My father used to read it, and I wasn't interested. But when I moved out, when I left my family, and I picked up a book by accident, I think, and I fell in love with it, and I read it, and I remember getting really sucked into the story, and I was the observer. I really. You didn't see pictures of these guys in the books of all these guys and creatures. You didn't see anything. There was no pictures in it. Well, a few, but it was only a little bit of artwork. But I imagined how they look. I had my own imagination of how they look and how they're standing and this and that. Sometimes it was like I was like. Imagine being sucked into the TV with a very good movie, and you're observing. You're standing behind the main character, and sometimes you have the feeling you have to step to the side a little bit just to don't catch a punch or so. That's how deep I was into these fucking stories, and this is how I played with my neighbor and best friend back then. We were 10, 12, 13, something like that. We played like madman. We played ninja and samurai and whatnot. And then my mother called from the window and said, "Hey, come in." And you were like, "Where am I?"
Yeah, you're transported back to this fucking place. You're like, what the hell?
This is how intense we played, or at least I played, and how I felt it. I was really angry at my mother that she pulled me out of it, because I created my own world, and I saw it. I saw everything as if it's crazy, and this is what I miss with the younger generation right now. I tried to give a book to my stepson, an interesting book. It was a book. It was a Eric von Däniken book, and I tried to give it to him to get him into the topic. He said, "A book? No, I'm not reading a book." I said, "Try it. Read. Let me pick out a few interesting pages for you, and you just read the pages, like 2 or 3 or 4 pages." "No, I'm not reading a book. I'm not reading a book." I was very, very, very disappointed. Same with my daughter. He said, I'm not reading. They have not one book in their room. That's very sad, but I can't force them to read. But a few days after that, came to me and said, "Oh, look at this. I found a very interesting video." And I said, "Oh, a video, yeah, a farting cat." And he said, "No, it's fucking stars. On planets. Do you notice videos? They're on YouTube, guys out there. You might know it. There's these videos out there where they compare planet sizes. You see Earth, and then you see the next bigger, next bigger, next bigger, next bigger, and in the end, you have a fucking big planet with Earth fits like 1,000,000 times into this fucking planet. I don't know." And he found it so interesting, that video. He was so blown away by how big planets can get. And I said, "This is science. This is science. And now pick a book and read a fucking book." He said, "No, but I will look out for videos like that in the future," he said. And then he found a video with planet sounds. Guys, maybe you guys, you found it also on YouTube. You can, if you type in planet sounds, every planet has its very own sound. And you can hear to the actual sounds that planets made on YouTube. You can type in planet sounds, and he found it also very interesting, very spooky sounds sometimes. And yeah, he likes stuff like that. So technology, iPads and cell phones and computers are not always bad. I'm not ranting about all that shit. It can be a tool to learn also, and to expand your mind and expand your reality also.
Come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But where I was going a few minutes ago, I don't remember. We're talking about the pyramids. We're talking about the possibility that maybe aliens helped to create all that shit, like the pyramids and stuff like that. If you don't mind, let me get into that a little bit.
Hell yeah.
I'm sure you and your listeners and viewers out there, let us know in the comments, have heard about the Dogon people already, who lived in West Africa. I find that very interesting story. I never covered the topic in my podcast. I should do that. One aspect of the culture is the knowledge of Sirius B, a companion to the star Sirius A. And before telescopes were even invented, the Dogon reported details about the orbit and the color of Sirius B. They spoke of beings they called, do you know it? Namo? Nommo? Namo? I think it was, these beings were called Namo. They spoke about these beings. And these beings, they say these beings came from the stars. These beings allegedly imparted knowledge of astronomy and agriculture to humans, as well as engaged in discussions about spiritual matters, I think. Yeah, I have to look it up again. But the god of the universe, they call Amma, A-M-M-A, sent the Dogon to the humans on Earth. And the Nommo were described as half human, half amphibian. Sounds funny, but it's interesting. They have I think there's a rock paintings, rock carvings out there. We can look them up. Nommo, N-O-M-M-O, I think. Yeah. They were initially red. The color were red, but turning white when they stepped foot on Earth. They turned white. That's interesting. I don't know if there's an explanation for that, but I found that an interesting point. Yeah, they supposedly originated from the Sirius system, residing on a planet within that system, and that's interesting. Those, as people like to call them sometimes, primitive people, talked about that fucking crazy stuff. Talked about beings coming from the stars, coming from Sirius B, and teaching them shit about agriculture and astronomy. So that's fucking interesting.
Dude, that shit is crazy. And then you ask, like, what is that all about? Because then, do you consider the flat Earth model, or have you looked into that at all? What do you think of that?
Dustin and I, we invited a flat earther to our podcast, but not to bash him or critique him. I'm not into that. Everybody coming to our podcast, no matter how crazy the topic is, I love to listen to these stories. I like to listen to the stories. I like to provide a platform so everybody can form its own opinion. And often, very often, I invite people, also in the German podcast, to tell the stories about stuff that I'm really not into. And sometimes I really do not like the topics, but I know there's people out there that like it. And one of that is the flat earth model. I really, that's a no-no for me. I really do not believe that earth might be flat. I know that earth is not really a round ball, of course. It's not a perfect round ball. We know that, we all know that, but I don't think the earth is flat. And I don't feel the conspiracy behind all that. I don't, even if it was flat, why keep it from us? Why tell us it's a fucking ball? Why not tell us it's flat? What's the mystery behind it? What's the use? What's the use in it? I don't fucking care if it's flat or a triangle shaped or I don't care. Maybe could have 8 edges. I don't care. I really don't care. I just don't feel the conspiracy behind it. And I'm one of these people who do believe we have been to space, because it's often an argument by these flat Earth guys that they say we haven't been to space and there is not really a picture of Earth and of all these planets, and that tells us they are spheric. And maybe if I was the same way and would think that we haven't been to space, it would be easier for me to jump on the topic, but it isn't. I do believe we have been to space. Maybe we haven't been on the moon the time they told us they were on the moon. I don't know, but we have been to moon. I'm sure. And I believe that there are pictures out there from actual planets and that tell us they are a ball.
This is what I find so fascinating about the psychology of this place, is that you can get to the point where you can believe that we left it, and that there are things out there, though, with this story above the fact that we left it that are in question. But the fact that we left is the basis of no question whatsoever. I just find that part interesting. And I think that if it is a psyop, which I'm not saying it is, but if it is, then it seems to be interesting that it's gotten a lot of people just off the ground. It's gotten people in the air and in space. And the idea that even with sort of the extra Apollo missions and the moon stuff, there's still conspiracy to be had if you subscribe to the fact that it exists, so that conspiracy can exist there, right? And so again, in my view, where I'm at now is everything here, even down to its core foundational, is an inversion of what's true. And I feel, excuse me again, one of our greatest, I guess, goals here, or bits of opportunity of experience, is to sort of discover that. And whenever I looked into the flat earth thing first, I was obsessed with it. It was like 3 years ago, and I was just like, what the fuck is this? And my beautiful wife at the time sat through 3 weeks of me just watching videos, asking questions, doing all this shit. Then I just sort of put it down for a little bit. And then I got back into the realm of spirituality and really started asking these interesting questions about this being a realm and a simulation. And in that way, it could simulate anything you want. It could be, if you as the observer here choose for this to be a globe, then you could technically hop into a rocket if it's a thing and shoot off, and because that reality would manifest ahead of you. Same to that if you were to say that this place is a flat edge or whatever, and then you go to the edge and there's an edge, right? But let's say that within that game, there also are presuppositions that just getting people the idea that space exists takes out a massive load off of the creators or the implementers of the facade of this place. I'll say that. The implementers of the facade, it's easier for them then to say, yeah, you're on this little ball. There's a bunch of shit out there. We're going to show you some images. They don't even call them photos, by the way. They call them images, which is not a photo. So then what they'll say is that we're on this little ball. There's places out there. Now the aliens, air quotes, are in cahoots with this idea as well. And I'm going to answer your question on why, or I'm going to answer one of the questions of why, which may lead to more questions, which is what it did for me. So the idea then that these aliens are in on it means that now the aliens are telling people, yeah, I'm from Zeta Reticuli, but this is what made me bring it up, is the Dogon tribe, right? They would then know things about a place that later people would discover through observation. Now, rather that was their before or not, they're simply observing it, in that fact created it, right? One of these kind of fucking concepts, then maybe that's the case. Or it's something that the aliens, whatever they are in on this massive conspiracy because the Earth is not round, or because rather it's like a plane that goes out, and really what extraterrestrial means is extra land. And to answer what I think the biggest conspiracy with that would be to take the confined lands in which we find ourselves and then to imaginatively wrap it around a ball and say that's all there is. That's all you have access to, rather, on this area. But if you were to then go with a lot of the ancient maps, and if we're talking about a de-evolution in society, that actually we're de-evolving to see this place more inaccurately than ever, then one could say that really with the flat earth maps and all of the things like that Japan map that was released, that was found in the caves of Tibet with all the other countries around it, all those other continents, that to me blows my mind. And that would also be a wonderful psyop for the douchebags that seem to be scarcity driven here, that really want you to think that there's a limited amount of things and it's real hard to obtain and that people have to suffer to just exist. But if you're on an expansive place with all of these resources, then that's not accurate, is it? So then you start toppling economies and things like that. So I think that there's a contrived invested interest in them that would like for you to not know what this place and what you are at all. There's a heavy interest in that model. You're seeing it on like the Universal before every movie, right? It's pumped into your psyche constantly. The globes in school, all of these things, I feel, again, are strong apprehensions that are put in you very early on. So is they're ridiculous to question later, is how I feel about it. And so it's a brilliant scheme, but what it is the fundamental foundation of what this place is. And then that, to me, changes everything, which is why it's valuable.
I love what you just said with the extraterrestrial. So it means extra land.
Because
didn't cross my mind until now.
I'll pull something up here, and this is by a book I've got on the shelf back there that I'm not going to grab, but it's by Nos Confunda, and it's called shit. Hang on one second.
Extraterrestrial.
Nos Confundum. Yeah, Nos Confundum is what it is. And what this dude talks about is the idea that maybe this place is completely different, more to the regard that it is this flat and expansive place, but really more to where it's sort of a cell, if you want to say that. It's interesting when you start looking at this stuff. I'm going to pull up a fuzzy picture of it for you. Guys, link in the show description for the video version of this so that you guys can check it out. And boom, pow, there it is. So if you could see that there on the screen, this is his idea. Now, Earth is right here, by the way. So if you look at things this way, then we could say like this idea of the ice wall and all of that kind of stuff, to where you do have these rings, but these additional land bits are what I find very interesting, right? Let's say that this is our world and this is what they're saying is Antarctica, which matches a lot of descriptions, okay? Then just outside of this, by way, there's also little gates and things in here. There's also little gates and stuff inside here that you can actually sail to the outside, allegedly, to the other lands, right? And now when you look at this, Asgard, Amen, Mermaid Islands, maybe some of these things just sort of slip into our reality, or maybe they have access all the time. Maybe there's, like I said, a lot cooler things going on here than what we're being told. Yeah, that picture just sucks of that thing, but I find a better picture of it.
Yeah, no, I get the idea, and I really do. I'm starting to like the idea. I haven't seen this picture. This picture makes the whole topic more interesting for me, to be honest, and I will have a look into it. So that means this map means that space is actually not real, if I
in the
get it
sense.
right.
So, but who's to say? Maybe something outside of this cell. Like maybe we're just in a cell, because if you look at that, that looks like an amoeba or something like this, right? And then who knows what's the unknown land. So you're talking about this millions of miles of distance to something that's unknown, but in between there, you cross a bunch of shit, again, allegedly on this map. But from our place here, you could see that the Anunnaki lands are right here, lands of Neptune, lands of Venus, lands of Draco, Saturn, Alderaan, land of the angels, lands of Mars. So whenever a Martian comes to visit you, maybe they're just flying the fuck over here and visiting you, but they all are in cahoots with the idea that this backwoods area of the map doesn't know that this is what the map is. It's like they say, right? The map is not the territory.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you start contemplating things like this to then take maybe the things that are planets in the sky are really luminaries. And I had a guy on recently, Tyler Hansen, that zooms into stars and they look wild. He finds dog faces in them and they look like they're underwater to a degree. So again, I find the thing interesting as all.
It is interesting indeed. I will look into that. That's very interesting. Yeah. And maybe those extraterrestrials or aliens that visit us are our neighbors that maybe knows more than we do, and only we are the stupid ones who think we're a ball floating in space. I do believe that, by the way, but it doesn't matter. I will have a look into that theory. I really do like it, man. I haven't seen that picture before. I really do like it.
It dovetails so nice with the modus operandi of this place, which is perception management in my mind. Its job is to fool the fuck out of you. And so if you have certain things that are so certain here, I think those are the things that you should be questioning the most.
Yeah. I think about if these extraterrestrials are actually our neighbors, if we are meant to meet each other. So there must be a meaning behind it. If
maybe you're a pet to them. You know, did you ever adopt a animal? Like when I was in 3rd grade, we adopted a whale, a humpback whale, and we all paid like $7 and we're told that we adopted this whale and we had a picture of its tail and that's how you knew it was your whale. Did you ever do anything like that in kids, like sponsor a panda bear or something like that?
Yeah.
So what if it's something like that? Because if you look at the consistency of reports, because you've talked to a lot of contactees, it's usually not Pleiadians hanging out one night, Greys hanging out the next, Anunnaki another night. It's usually one set of beings, air quotes, and it's usually the ones. Now, they may change from like a teddy bear as they're a kid to a Grey to a Pleiadian, and then they say that that's a stair step, meaning that they basically like bitched you out, right, to... they pimp you out to another species, which is interesting. But this could be sort of a cell project as well. I think they covered this in Jupiter Ascending. Did you ever watch that movie?
Yes.
Yeah, so something like that, where it's really just energy and you're just sort of stock and property. And maybe you can be sold to one of these other vendors, these interests.
It's interesting. Very interesting thoughts, man. That's why I love you.
I love you back. They're mostly gross, actually. I'm not a fan of this theory, but it makes more sense than the one proposed, honestly.
Yeah, but what does this theory say about how old are these different civilizations then? I mean, if everything is on one piece of dirt, so is it possible that some civilizations are millions of years ahead or behind?
It seems like this, in my mind, is a garden for these very advanced beings that need this energy, our energy, for something. Maybe this is a cabbage patch garden for a food forest for something, right? And every now and then they come through and flood it, which is what we talked about ancient societies kind of being too smart. They're like, no, they're figuring out some dope shit and how to build some stuff. They're kind of getting close to figuring out what this place really is, or maybe they knew what this place really was, and that was too much for them to bear for what they really were. Maybe they came to terms with what they really were, which seems to be harder for our society if it's what's occurring, if we are a food source. So if we are a food source, then every now and then they plow the field, right? You need to get a new crop in there and you need things to change up, and you do that by tilling the land. You do a big reset. But just like, you know, in your garden, maybe there's a little garden gnome out there called the pyramid that you kind of like the look of. So you just leave it every time and you just kind of mow around it a little bit. And then it's in your next garden as well for your new crops. And then that's what we are, which could be what this contact phenomena is altogether. I think the fact that we can be so mentally switched off at any moment by these things, whatever it is a built-in mechanism of that we are some sort of either AI or some sort of crop, and there's some resonance built into our DNA that we just shut down whenever we see them because we've been apprehended in some way. Almost like a mental tranquilizer dart that just goes, yep, you're our food, we have control over you kind of thing. They just shut you down. It's weird, man. I don't know. I don't trust it, whatever it is.
Yeah. Man, you just expanded my reality.
It'll happen, dude. And this is the thing. And this is why, like, just going, no, I can't. I will say that the Earth is at least round. Now that we've even considered the possibility that in itself is a psyop, then that leads you to more questions, right? I mean, it's just interesting when you consider it. I have no fucking clue what's going on here, but as somebody who pays attention to systems and how they function, this one functions pretty goddamn well. And when you plug in the dark matter equation, dark matter being that we are the matter that is the fuel for this system and a crop in certain ways, it's pretty dark, man. I mean, it's weird. It works, but it's dark from our perspective. But maybe again, from this Lands of Draco, they're having a blast and they love we're a delicacy.
It's just in my naive worldview, sometimes I simply refuse to see conspiracy behind everything. I deal with people in the podcast and around me that see a conspiracy in everything. Everything. I mean, pharma industry, of course. There's a lot of fuckery going on. I don't doubt the pharma industry is fucking around with us. Of course, politics, money, banks. I mean, everything, there's foul apples, right? I know that. But I just simply refuse to fill myself up with anger about everything being a conspiracy. NASA is fucked up, and politicians are fucked up. Pharma industry is fucked up. Food is fucked up. Everything is fucked. I just simply refuse to jump on every theory. I know there's something behind everything, of course, but I refuse to make my life worse with the thought of it every day and all day long. People that got lost in all that shit. They go outside, they see a conspiracy everywhere. This guy, he's observing me, and this and that is observing you, and my cell phone is observing me, and everything is observing me. Of course, my cell phone is observing me. I know that. It's probably listening right now. Fuck it. I bought it. I know it. I just don't. What if? Fuck it. It's if I don't want to, I turn it off or put it away or something like that. But there's some things that I do like, and the one that you presented right now, I really do love the idea. Like I said, I will have a look into that. In my naive opinion or approach when it comes to alien life is that Earth is a relatively young planet, and somewhere out there are civilizations that are thousands of millions and years ahead of us. When considering what humans have invented and developed in their short span of existence, one can only imagine what life might be like on a planet of a much more advanced species, especially where do such beings stand intellectually. That's interesting. That's an interesting thought. What preoccupies them? What is the purpose of their existence? That's these thoughts I deal with. Are such beings interested in making contact with us, vastly underdeveloped life forms like us? Is there a purpose and a meaning to it? Personally, I do not think so. I don't think so. I believe they observe and study. There might be species that are not too far from our stage of development. I believe that, and perhaps they are more interested in making contact with us. I believe that too. But considering the typical earthly problems we still have, war, greed, envy, hunger, you have to wonder what the benefit could be for such beings to engage with us, right? So these are my naive thoughts when it comes to alien life. These are the problems I'm dealing with inside my head. What could be the motivation for them to connect with species dealing with these issues? I think I told you that I'm into H.P. Lovecraft a lot, and I loved his dark shit. Are you into Lovecraft a little bit?
A little bit, absolutely. Yeah, the Cthulhu is badass, man. What a cool creature, you know.
I don't love that he was fucking racist, but it doesn't matter. You still can love the the novels and that shit. I loved it, man. Lovecraft. I love how Lovecraft uses and describes the great old ones. Could be aliens too, right? These indescribable beings about whom we have no idea what their agenda is. And that's crazy. That's a crazy thought. These are thoughts that I have. But we know that to them, we humans are utterly insignificant, at least in Lovecraft's novels. For them, we are dirt, we are atoms, we're nothing. We're just slaves to them, and that terrifies us, right? To be confronted with a creature that emerges from the I don't know, from the fucking void, and is completely indifferent to us. We don't know what it intends. We don't know how it will treat us when it arrives, and it triggers fears of the unknown within us. These are my thoughts.
Well, and we're brought up to hate everything that's different than us anyway, even in our own species. You know, racism's learned. That's a learned thing that kids are taught, you know, based on their environment. So it's not innate in us to be that way. It's something fucked up. And I think it's parasitic, if anything. If you find like your Hitler's running around out there, that's a parasitic entity, probably in control of some new world order that's been in control of this place the entire time, that sort of just steps up technology as a distraction, not as an aid to humanity as in which it's presented. Like, so I don't know how much better off you think society is, but I don't think it's much better, you know, than the 80s when we were growing up without all this shit going on. I'd say we're more connected, but you know, at what cost? You know, it's very interesting that it's sort of like, it feels like if it is a game and that you and I chose this, that we really knew shit would need to hit the fan for us to come together to defeat it. It's almost like this counterintuitive strategy to the game, if anything else. It's like when you run further away from something, it gets further away from you. But to beat the game, you have to come in contact with it. Yes. So it's almost like one of those electromagnetism things. I don't know. It's fascinating though. And it just seems that the interaction between people, even though we're more connected now, yes, it's separating out those who really aren't here for connection, but those who are, like you and I mean, we're setting up plans to meet each other in person. We've got events going on now. So we're taking it out of the digital and into the, let's get amongst them, you know, in the reality. And I think that that's something that a lot of us are choosing to do now, but that not a lot of people will. Like you said, there's a reclusion that's also incentivized in this kind of connectivity because not all of it is real. So you get the idea that everyone on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or something is a real person, but I'm going to say absolutely fucking not. And there's obvious ones, especially like you get a lot of messages and shit like I do. You get a lot of comments. You can tell based on the profile if it's a real one or not, just based on the direction that they lean the conversation in the comments, as well as how many followers. You can see how old their profile is. All these kind of interesting things. When you look at it, it's not real at all. It's a bot. And so then to like base your life on that and to say, oh my God, I need X amount of followers, or I need X amount of comments, or I'm grateful that I'm engaging in my comment section because I'm going to lose people if I don't. Then it's, again, if you look at it like maybe it's a bunch of fucking bots, and you can tell the real people in most degrees. But I'd say to live your life as slaves by this external reality is what this place is really, really, really good at. And if anything, man, I think if there is a meaning to this place, it's to be aware of one single thing. It's that your energy is what creates your reality and what fuels and what grows in your existence. So if you're looking at the problems of your life, those are going to swell ad infinitum. How I sort of look at this is like everything around you is one of those carnival game balloons that when you shoot into the mouth of a clown, its head gets bigger, you know, and explodes, right? And everything around here wants you to fill it with your attention so that it can expand and grow with your energy. And if you look at the place like that, that single observation is one of the most terrifying but empowering, because then you're not swayed by any of this dumb shit. You know that the mental parasites that have come in for a little bit are just that, temporary and very small, and they need to come at you in these really odd, distracting ways just to get a little bit of your energy. This is what I think the media does. This whole look over here, all the shit going on, all the it's dangling keys, just looking for your attention, literally. This is why also they say, go within, go within. You know, I am seeing this concept more and more and more. And this isn't necessarily a don't interact with anything, because I absolutely don't believe in that at all. There's a fine middle balance here that I'm achieving graciously and cautiously optimistically. That is this integration of the dark, but being letting the dark be the fuel that fuels the brightest light I've ever fucking been. And it's one of the most insane transitions I've ever gone through. And it's incredibly powerful, but it is, again, the realization that everything out here, even us in this conversation, this is an energy exchange, you and I. And the people listening, this is an energy exchange with them as well. And so to realize that everything in your reality, your thoughts, your everything is fueling whatever you're giving your attention to, that has been the single greatest awareness. I still feel it's a temporary truth. I think it's a stair step to another understanding that I'll achieve later, but I'm pretty happy with that one because it's changed my life. It really has. It's made me way more mindful of what I fill with my attention.
Yeah. Very, very interesting thoughts, man. I love to reside in this vessel at these times.
Yeah.
Because we live in very interesting times where people like you are observing and experiencing and researching all these very, very interesting topics. And I don't know if we still have a few minutes, we can get into the topic that I wanted to talk about maybe an hour ago or so. Because
Please.
People back then, maybe in the medieval times, they also love to, maybe they did not love to, but they had to deal with stuff like that too, and did break their head about certain stuff. And I like to talk about folklore, legends, especially superstitions, and we're going away from the aliens now, man, and going to a different topic a little bit, at least. I had this podcast conversation here in Germany with the curator of a superstition museum. And he shared a lot of fascinating stories with me. His name is Gunther Altenkirch. Probably be a little bit hard for you to say his name, but he's a very interesting guy. He's a elderly man, but he has this awesome superstition museum where he collects all these crazy things. And yeah, let me get into it a little bit. Among them, he shared many stories with me, and among them there were tales related to superstitions surrounding houses. And I love superstitions around the house because we also live in a very old house, my wonderful wife and I, with the kids. We have a very old house from 1860, like I said, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it's very old. And we discussed the subject of building sacrifices. In German, it's Bauopfer. I don't know if there's a term in English that describes it, but building sacrifices. So when constructing a house, they would take it's a little bit macabre, but they took a live cat, sometimes a live dog, and placing them in a bricked enclosure in the basement while still alive. So basically, bury him alive. And I'm a construction worker, and I once worked in an old house in my hometown here. The owner told me that she found an old cat in the basement nailed to a wooden bench, about head height, I would say. Desiccated cat. Is it called desiccated? It was dry. You know what I mean? It was completely dry already. The man from the museum told me, because I told him what I experienced, and he told me that the new owners of the house, maybe the guys that originally built the house, they died, and then 50 years later someone else bought the house or moved in. They sometimes took these dead cats out of their stone graves and they nailed them somewhere else to ensure the continued protection of the house. So they nailed him to their doors or in the woodshed, something like that to ensure the protection. As gruesome as it sounds, people back then strongly believed that this ritual would bless and protect the house. Like I said, for example, it was thought to guard against fire, storms, other kind of damages. And he recounted a story for which he even had a written record. And that's interesting. He had original written record of this incident, which I'm about to tell you. And this, people fasten seatbelts because this made me almost tear up when I heard it the first time. It tells the story of a poor woman who sold her daughter for a few coins to wealthy individuals who used the child as a sacrifice during construction. I told you about the cats, about the dogs, but this woman was poor and it was a big house. Wealthy people built it, like I said, and they wanted to, give the spirits a very good sacrifice. And similar to the fate of the cats and dogs, the child was walled in alive. And the mother was given honorary seat in the front row while it happened. And like I said, people keep in mind, this is a written record. It's with the original letters, everything, date stamp on it, everything. It's documented. So this really happened. In the record, it described how the child repeatedly called out her mother while being walled in. You could hear her saying, "Mother, mother, I can see you, I can see you." And then as the wall was built higher, she cried, "Mother, I'm standing on tiptoes and I still can see you." Man, it's gut-wrenching, right? I almost cried when I heard it. And finally, as the last stone was placed, the girl, she was full of fear. And she cried out, "Mother, it's dark and I'm very afraid." And she cried and man, yeah, it's a heart-pounding story, man. And people in the past used to place various items under the floorboards. We found them here in our house. We found pictures, drawings, buttons, small dolls, or maybe arms or legs of small dolls. We found chicken wings, and people sometimes find eggs, stuff like that. Not only, or shoes, a hat, an old hat. Those were all these construction sacrifices. I don't know, like I said, if there's an English term for it, but let's call it construction sacrifice. Yeah. If you want to say something to what I said, go for it.
That's easily the grossest story we've ever heard here, and we've heard a lot in a lot of episodes, and that was horrific. But what I will say also is that it's interesting that they thought that this was for luck. I see it as the complete opposite. I see it as you beginning this building's history on a traumatic event, doing something fucked up with the intent of doing something fucked up, whether misguided or not. You know that that's fucked up. And then carrying it out anyway, which then in my mind solidifies the fact that that building will be a conduit for something for a long time. So the fact that it was woven into construction lore to, make sure that you do something fucked up to your building before so that, any spirit we want can access it. Maybe those are puppeted by the entities who access it, right? It's fucked, Daniel. That whole concept, man, it's disgusting, and it seems just pretty sick, to be honest with you, just in every degree.
It is sick. It's gut-wrenching, man. Like I said, when I heard the story, while he told me the story, I almost teared up a little bit. I have kids myself, man. I can imagine doing that to my kid. I would rather starve to death than selling my kid for such a purpose. But people back then had a strong, all they had were they believe in God and religion, right?
Yeah, but of what degree, of what God were you believing, and what religion did you believe? Because you can be convinced, and as long as enough people are convinced that this ritual is a good one, then they'll do it. I mean, that's fucked up, against all morality.
And you find you're a preacher or something, I don't know, or a man or a woman who can convince somebody like really easy, and you find someone like this desperate woman, poor on the streets, no roof above your head, and
yeah, we got a new bank going in. We really need a sacrifice for this. I don't want to wall my own kid into this fucking thing.
Yeah,
Good thing we've kept everyone in poverty so that we can exploit the energy resources of our harvest. It's almost like these bankers and shit attempt to keep people in that state also. It's its own type of harvest. And this is what signing your kid over with their birth certificate does as well. CPS, your kid's not your kid. The state owns your kid if you have a birth certificate. And so they can come up, deem you an unfit parent for any reason they make up. And then now they have your kid for whatever. They could wall it up in a fucking building. I mean, it's a dark ass place. And this is why also I'm not a huge fan of that idea of like, this is fucking, we're going to 5D, guys. I don't know, man. It's shit like that. Like kids getting walled up in fucking rooms and horrific things like that, I don't know, maybe sort of doubt the optimism people have for the place in which we find ourselves, dude.
But as fucked up as the story is, it's important to say that this was not the norm. Didn't happen very often that they took humans. They took humans, and he also told me stories about how inmates or thieves and people like that was chosen. They was given the opportunity to be walled in, instead of dying somewhere in a cage from hunger, starved to death, or being beheaded or something like that. They said, "Hey, man, you can die for a good purpose. Let's fucking wall you in, or we chop your head off, or we I don't know, go to the gallows or poison you or whatever they did to the people back then. You know it. They broke your bones in a million places. So some of them said, yeah, fucking wall me in. I don't care. So yeah, and this is why I often say I don't know about good and bad, about the concept of good and bad. What is good and bad? Who decides what is good and bad? We invented good and fucking bad. We humans invented. This is our concept, the human concept, good and bad. But what is good and bad? People thought back then it was good to wall in, I don't know, a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old girl because to satisfy the spirits of the fucking house. And in other occurrences, people were walled in. You know that in history, people were walled in as a punishment, of course. They were walled in alive as a punishment because they did something fucked up. So they took thieves or assassins or I don't know, even monks or some guys that betrayed the king or the emperor. They walled them in and killed them with it. So what's good and bad? Good and bad is a strange concept, man. What is good? What is bad? We decide. Those who have the power decide what is good and bad. Now we're in a point of time again where, a lot of things are bad. So it's crazy to wrap your mind around that.
It is. I think, though, the times are shifting quite a bit. I think with our energy being focused on the more that we're creating here rather than what is being attempted to be taken from us that hasn't been taken yet. I think that is where the true power lies, is even hearing a story like that and going, man, that was fucked. I'm glad we don't live like that. And I definitely don't think that that's a cool way to exist. Like, just little considerations as far as not finding that a viable option for experience to further our progress anymore, man. It's just it's a wild realm, dude. And I don't know. I think about, again, the perception management, man, the idea that somebody, and not even somebody, an entire generation or several generations of people were convinced that was the way to go. And that was just like the options that they had available to them. It's just interesting, that's all. I don't know. I think it's fucked up. And
another example is when we talk about witches, especially here in Germany or in Europe. Indeed, people in the past harbored intense fears of witches, especially in Germany and Europe. And we had witch burnings in this fucking village where I live too. I have a book. I purchased a book not too long ago with stories and cases about witch trials here in my area, like in a radius of 100 kilometers or so. And I found out that in my village here, they had 6 or 7 witches which they put on the pyre and burned. So it's people were afraid of witches back then, of course. As a protective measure against them, individuals would nail various things to the front door. I told you, feathers, tools, wire, stuff like that, because they use it as protection against witchcraft and witches. Occasionally, a pitchfork would be leaned against the wall, or a broom, but they would put it on the wall upside down because they thought the witch wouldn't land. It's the crazy thing about it is, so we have people here who tried to, and they use magic spells too to get rid of witches. They use magic spells and shit like that. So we have people here who try to protect themselves from precisely the same thing, using magic spells. And this is quite bizarre. They're using magic spells and magic objects they put on the door and under the stove and stuff like that, because they were afraid of witchcraft. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. They killed the same people and they did the same. They killed these people who did stuff like that, who dealt with that stuff. Mostly it was women who knew how to brew a nice tea from herbs they collected, and they knew how to cure your belly aches and your headaches and stuff like that. So yeah, of course we have to kill them. Why not? So, and you did this fucking same thing to protect yourself from these people. Ain't that crazy? It is crazy. Yeah. Let's talk about the fucking devil. I told it in the podcast I did before with the other guys. If you think about the devil, most of you out there think about the devil. How do you picture the devil when you think about the devil? Before I learned what I'm about to say, I picture the devil, of course, like it's a fucking bodybuilder, right? With animal legs and hooves and fucking horns, and it's red. And yeah, he's this action figure, and he's big. He's as big, at least as big as a man, or twice the size of a man, and he has this fucking fork in his hands. And of course, he's sitting in hell waiting for your ass to come down there because you did a lot of fucking shit in your life, right? This is how people picture the devil. This is how people that fear the devil picture the devil. Of course, must be a very intriguing figure, of course. But like I said, let's talk about the devil. People in the past, before religion hit really hard, they didn't see the devil that way. They imagined the devil as tiny. It wasn't that devil. It was devils. They imagined the devils as tiny, cunning beings that wreaked havoc inside the house. This is how people imagine. Those were little tiny
like fairies.
Like fairies, they mischievous creatures carried out malicious deeds with great cunning, all while avoiding being seen because they were cowardly. The devil back then, devils were cowards, and they did not want to get caught while tripping over your glass of wine or glass of water. Later on, as the church gained more and more influence, of course, we know that the devil transformed from those tiny, cunning beings into this large, menacing bodybuilder with a fucking pitchfork in his hand, waiting for you on its throne in fucking hell. And people back then, they had their nature religions. They loved the nature spirits, loved to, I don't know, dance around naked around their favorite tree, watching a waterfall. And then church came and said, man, look what we have here. We have a nice book here. It's even better than what you believe. Oh, and by the way, if you don't follow the book, we'll fucking kill you. And there's reports of emperors that killed hundreds and thousands of people in just one day because they wouldn't accept the Christian religion. And this is fucked up, man. Nature religion was a good thing. Why not? But church came and said, no, this is better. Look at this. It's way better. I'm sorry about me ranting here and taking up all the space here, but when I said nature religions, I always have to think about this story about maybe you heard it because it's very interesting. I will look it up. I will look the story up and send it to you if you don't know it. There was this female researcher who researched on chimps. And she told the story, I think it's many years ago. And she told the story about these chimps in the special area. They traveled to a big waterfall. And the closer they got to this waterfall, they got more and more excited when they heard the waterfall. Oh, finally, I can hear the waterfall. And they got excited. They went to the waterfall a few times a month. I don't know. And yeah. They got more and more excited while going there, listening to the waterfall. And when they arrived at the waterfall, they just stood there, watched the waterfall, and they started to sway left and right. Man, when I did read that, I almost cried, man. These fucking chimps standing there upright, and they swayed. They swayed to the sound of the waterfall. Imagine that. Isn't that crazy? And they started to climb the waterfall, observing the water. They throw in sticks and rocks and stones into the water, and they watch for a long time how the stick would move in the water and go with the flow, and how the rocks turn over and over. And it really seemed to be but because when they were finished with throwing rocks and shit, it was like a ritual. She said it was like a ritual. When they finished with throwing rocks and all that stuff, they sat beside the waterfall and they just observed it, sucked up the energy and the area, and they were sitting here with open eyes, but they weren't really there. It was as if they were meditating. They were in a meditative state. that's so awesome. I love this article. I love to read this article and imagine these chimps standing in front of the waterfall and swaying back and forth. Isn't that crazy, man? Isn't it crazy? Isn't it how and people back then also were connected with nature just like these chimps still are. And somebody came and took it from us. And they said, nature is the devil now. They made nature the devil. I have a guy in Germany, his name is Thomas Höfgen, and he writes book about it. And in one of his books, he talks about it, how religion hit and made nature the devil. This is the term he uses. They made nature the devil. The devil is nature. These nature spirits are the devil. It's not a fucking red bodybuilder. It's nature. They made nature the devil. And this is crazy. This is really crazy. So sorry for my long rant, but yeah.
No apologies for the rant. It was a brilliant observation because now I'm sitting here thinking about, excuse me, this idea of like these archons or whatever, these small little things is what I've reduced them to. Before they were these huge, scary beings, but now they're these tiny little fucking get out of here. You know, these little things that just kind of tinker. It's not even, it's just a little malicious and it's annoying rather than anything else, but you don't give it your annoyance anymore, right? It's this interesting thing, but yes, the church would then make this idea of the devil be this huge thing. And we've talked about the idea of Lucifer or Satan and, you know, how many times it's mentioned in the Bible versus what it really meant that, you know, Lucifer, the light bringer, right, is really more of an adversary to Jesus than the enemy, which is how it's portrayed in this scary way. Adversaries challenge you in certain ways and allow you to grow from dark places and all of this kind of stuff. But enemies and these things to be feared only recluse and make you withdraw and hide your light rather than shine it for fear of it being recognized by these dark beings and you not being strong enough because you've been told that you're not. And that is the biggest horseshit right there. That is the inversion again, is that you are the powerful motherfucker and we're needing to be apprehended and so belittled and small and shrunken to be here as some sort of fucking beautiful food source because we are so goddamn powerful. It's sort of where I'm at with it now. It's an interesting thing to see that though this is a mental battlefield, that if it is a battlefield at all, it's all about your mind. And so again, this what your attention goes to. If as you're making choices throughout your day, you think that some huge Hovenkloeft fucking bodybuilder with a pitchfork is going to jam it in your ass, then you make decisions differently. And so it's a good way to control a populace. It's this, you know, elf on a shelf or God or anything else. It's this idea that something's watching you and policing you with your own mind is how it works.
Maybe the devil manifested into being this fucking red bodybuilder with a pitchfork because a lot of people...
Like an egregore, like put their energy to it and made it so.
Their energy into it. We were talking about the concept of church. I don't like church, right? Nobody likes church. If you believe in God, and even if the biblical God, you can praise him all day long while sitting at home. You don't have to go to church and put your money into this fucking bag. Keep your money, guys.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, it's blasphemy. Yeah, get him, get his ass. But yeah, you can. No, it's not belief. It's not bound to the church. And I don't like the concept of church. Of course, not every church is bad. Of course not. Of course not. And sometimes they do very, very nice things and good things. You have to point it out. But it all in all, the concept of church, I personally do not like the concept of church. I don't. But we've talked about, and I have been to church, man. I'm married 2 times, and I don't know. Yeah. I was in church 2 times. No, I was more often. But what I liked about the church is the energy it creates. I don't pray, or sometimes I pray, but I pray different. But it's my personal thing. I'm not talking about it, but I pray, but pray to some different being and then pray different. And I pray inside, and I don't fold my hands, fall on my knees. Yeah, I pray to the universe, maybe. But in being inside a church sometimes gave me something. Fuck what it is. I don't care. But the place and the building, and see the building as some kind of antenna. Building is always with a large tower, and see it as an antenna. And you are everybody. All these batteries walk inside. Right? All these energizers walk inside, old ones, young ones, teenagers, everything walks inside, and they all praying at the same time, saying the same fucking things, and creating an energy. And maybe this energy, I mean, take the term antenna as a metaphor. Don't see it as a real antenna, but energy is created, energy is bundled, and energy is sent somewhere. Even if I don't like the concept of church, like I said, it's a place where energy is created, energy gets bundled and sent out to who knows where. This is what I like about church. I don't care what these songs and prayers are about, but I like the drive when everybody's saying the same, and it's awesome. And it's awesome. It's about frequencies. We talked about frequencies when we talked. It's also frequencies, and yeah, they get sent out somewhere to someone maybe, or maybe they just disappear somewhere. But yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And we do look at them as they were generating for energy and generating energy themselves with the cymatic patterns and the windows and these organs and all these amazing things. But again, we feel that that was probably from a time when it was being utilized, for an altruistic purpose, if it ever was. Maybe that in itself is a psyop. The thought that at one point it was there, but it's gone now, is sort of in my mind also the idea that space is real, meaning that it's this thing out there, but you can't reach it because of our current understanding of technology, meaning that, yeah, this whole thing was here, but maybe it's just maybe you woke up this morning with all of these memories implanted and none of it's real at all. And just this concept of that what we've been researching and things are where we pick up the game at, with this idea that it's real at all. And we say this about history, man. It's a crapshoot, to be honest, I think.
Since I mentioned the term of manifesting things, like I said, maybe people manifested the devil and it became the devil and hell exists. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't believe in heaven and hell. You can create your own hell here on earth while you're alive, or you can create your own heaven while you're alive.
Yeah, no, to that point though, what if there's enough people that believe that the devil is that it again, sort of like that comic, that carnival game I was describing, fills the balloon up to where now this thing is a real powerful entity and it's constantly being not only inflated, but has influence because people are putting energy in toward that concept. I think the second that you turn your energy off from any of those things, they instantly go away.
But I do think that it's only becomes only a reality for people who,
for the ones that believe
blowing into the balloon.
Yes,
So,
exactly. You've nailed it.
Yeah.
That only
But not for me.
applies to those that subscribe. Exactly. Well, then now scale that. That is scalable to anything in this reality, right? The wars, the government, any of the shit that you think is out there to come and get you, only if you're giving it the attention that it requires to come and get you.
Yeah. What do you think about, and it's not as off topic as people might think now, what do you think about dragons?
I think that what people are saying is dinosaurs was actually a shitload of dragons everywhere. And one thing that I do find also interesting is that the Chinese zodiac has all real, air quotes, real characters on it except one, the dragon, which is, one could then say that maybe dragons were real and that none of them are fictitious at all. I think that there's so many interesting things that they found in rocks. There's a buddy of mine, Tom Wheeler, shout out, dude, from Sibs of Insta, the mountains were melted giants, on TikTok as well. And this dude has found some fascinating things where these mountains look like giant dragons or anything else. And I've heard a lot of controversy over dinosaurs, period. That the way that they were invented, that the dude that wrote them up, that actually all bones in any museum are not real, they say, because it's radioactive from 65 million years ago, and that's why they don't display them. So they're all chicken bones that they've been sort of mashed and conglomerated together and then whittled into make what you see as presented as a dinosaur for you. Then there was this, boggle in paleontology, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, where this guy came out and admitted that they took the list of dinosaurs that they had and had to shrink it by like at least 2/3 because they were noting that different ages in the same species as other species. So they would see a teenage T-Rex and call it a velociraptor or something like that. But really it was just the same thing, just at a different stage of development, right? So there were those kind of interesting things. But again, the whole foundational idea that this place is that old, that an asteroid came and hit it, that there was a species of something that was not us here before. But when we look at carvings, there's all sorts of art with humans riding around on brontosauruses and living side by side with triceratopses and shit. So maybe they were a real thing, but to your question specifically, dragons, I think, were a thing and that did exist and may still exist in some parts of this place.
What if enough people were around that for some reason manifested, believed in beings like that, manifested them? When all these people died out that believed in these things, they died out too.
Yeah.
We here in Germany, we have a lot of stories about tales, stories about dragons, not real reports about eyewitness reports about dragons, but we have these very old tales, right? We have sometimes, and it's important to point out where the dragon originally probably originated. The dragon became a face many years after the term dragon originated.
Really? Like the ballpoint pen that Anne Frank wrote her diary in wasn't invented until 5 years later?
Maybe. Sometimes a dragon was simply the smoke coming from a chimney. Talking about these times that I told you about earlier, with all the witchcraft shit and building sacrifices, stuff like that. Sometimes it was the smoke coming from the chimney of the neighbor's house. That alone was enough to make the neighbor go crazy and think that a dragon has been sent to steal from him, maybe steal a chicken or steal the eggs, which he ate himself because he was fucking drunk, or I don't know. But there was a reason to say, my neighbor sent me a dragon and he stole my money and he stole my eggs and he stole my fucking chicken. And or the neighbor, he wants to bring me big misfortune, so he sent me a dragon. Of course, back then, I don't remember the name. Sorry, guys. I will look it up and maybe tell you next time, or Brandon will tell you the name. It wasn't called dragon back then, but they used a term similar to dragon. And from that, the name dragon originated. So, because dragons didn't always have a defined appearance, people didn't always have a clear image of what a dragon was. Of course, the concept developed much later. The term dragon was also used to describe a thunderstorm, bad weather, associating it with fire and natural disasters, stuff like that. That was a dragon back then. Talking about the days when nature religions and people pray to the nature spirits or talk to the nature spirits was one with nature. Dragons. That was dragons. Thunderstorm, lightning, dragons. Those were fucking dragons. Of course, what's fascinating is the fact that there are narratives about dragons in many cultures of worldwide. We've talked about it. And here we are talking about real physical beings that people claim to have seen. So back to what I said in the beginning, the same we mentioned when we talked about hell and heaven and devils. Maybe there were enough people who pictured dragons like that, and at one point they existed and then they disappeared again. I know it's wild. It's wild. It's not even a real theory, right? It's just thoughts. But it's wild. I know it's wild. It sounds wild, but hey, why not? Everything is possible, man. I believe that everything is possible.
No, it's totally possible. And then you think of maybe that's this exodus of species, this idea that the Mayans just up and went somewhere. Maybe, one of their sponsors in the, I don't know, lands of Arcadia or something out there across the ice wall picked them up and they said, hey, we've been watching you guys for a long time. We want you to come hang out with us at our place. And maybe they're the ones that influenced them to build the way that they did, formed a relationship and said, hey, actually, the planet's kind of shit, or that realm is kind of shit, but these people are there all right. I vouch for them. And then maybe pick them up and move on with some of these civilizations that do these mass exodus and stuff like that, these migration again of species that it's called. Maybe dragons just flew the fuck over the ice wall, and landed somewhere else, and they kind of freely move. Or maybe this place changes constantly and pushes environmentally people out to other realms, and then now this realm is then recycled for something new, but it can't get rid of everything. It's like killing every cockroach. It's like at something hid under a rock or in a mountain somewhere, and it's got some crevice that it's found, and then maybe it was pregnant, and then it's like all these different scenarios where you think about, and then you apply this to like Bigfoot and all that kind of stuff. And something I wanted to wrap back to before I let you go would be this idea of patterns and the phenomena. And I just spoke of Bigfoot. Have you heard of that women around Bigfoot create a different reaction than if it's only men? Have you heard about this?
Oh, that's wild. No, I never heard about that. Interesting.
Yeah, Alexander Petikoff, amazing dude. He's actually coming to our event to speak and everything. He talks about that these stories in Alaska where these guys will note that if they have a woman with them on their team tracking Bigfoot or out even just camping or something, that they'll hear more baby crying noises in the woods than if they're just men by themselves. They don't hear baby crying noises. It's almost like it entices women specifically to hear a baby crying and to want to venture out to see what it is. Isn't that wild? Sort of like sirens that will bay at sailors and stuff, right? It's what the dudes want. They want to get some. And so it calls to them in this very loving, soothing way from a female voice that enchants them. It almost knows what they want, sort of a thing, or what will lure them. It's almost like anglerfish. Anglerfish, they have the little bulb on them and then that attracts everybody. It's kind of wild. It's almost like the same concept in my mind. I just found that pattern in the phenomena pretty interesting.
It's very interesting. I never heard about that. That's very interesting.
Alexander, he's great. You should totally have him on. We'll, I'll get you. I got you.
Yeah, what you said before with the Mayans also very interesting. What's also bizarre is and interesting is that at some point in time, humans were drawn intensively underground, and that's wild. And there's stories about the Mayans also that they protected their stuff from, I don't know, people that attacked them underground and built these fucking giant underground tunnels in South America. Man, they're wild. If you hear about these tunnels in South America, these underground tunnels, how big and long and wide they are, it's crazy, man. It's really crazy. And here in Germany as well, in Austria, there are many so-called it's called Erdstelle in Deutsch, in German, Erdstelle, like earth stalls or earth stables. These are in part long tunnel systems with generally very narrow passages through which only a single person can pass. Yeah. No one knows exactly what purpose they were and created and by whom. Nobody knows who built these earth stalls. Dating them has proven difficult for some reason, but yet they exist. What adds to the mystery is the fact that many of them were constructed in a very impractical manner. Who builds an underground tunnel system where nothing can be stored, right? Or no one can hide for a longer time or linger, and where nobody can be buried or nobody has been buried down there. So what's the purpose of these? I told you about the resonance chambers, also a mystery. Resonance chambers, man, that's crazy. It's so wild, and I don't know, raises so many questions. There's a story about small people here, about dwarves in Germany. Whether there's any truth to it or not, I don't know. But if you go far back in history, we encounter Homo floresiensis, the smallest human species we've ever known. I mean, they were said to be around, I think, 3 feet tall. Even though they likely only inhabited in the islands of Flores, we don't know if we had a population here too, similar to them. Yeah. But that's a whole nother story, man.
Dude, it gets crazier and crazier. The more we look at this place, the more we, come to these conversations, the more fascinating it gets. I mean, like today, you were able to come by and tell us not only your incredible story, man. I mean, it's fascinating, the triangle UFO, the paranormal things you've been experiencing, but also about some things over there where you're at, which next time we come on, brother, man, we're going to set up a chat, so stay on after if you don't mind, for a Patreon hangout. Those are a lot of fun, dude. The whole crew gets to hang out. We have a conversation, then they do sort of a question and answer thing after. They're badass, man. So linked below is all the ways to sign up for that, guys, if you want to join us. Linked below as well is all the way to find our buddy Daniel Bechmann here. Flying Chariots, The Rise is your YouTube, your Facebook. Our conversation, of course, on your show will be linked below. Any other way that you want to be found will be down there as well. So let's say this, my friend. Leave us on a high note. Leave us on something that gives you hope and keeps you moving forward, because we talked about walling people up today. So what do you got, man? Leave us on a high note.
Yeah, man. Even though we talked about some very dark aspects of history today, like walling in people and a little girl, man, that's fucked up, I know, but all this stuff teaches us something, right? And it gives us stuff to think about and understand where we came from, maybe where we're heading. It's still an interesting journey, even if we talk about fucked up things like that. I love this journey. I love to talk about very inspiring minds like yourself, and I love whom I met throughout my journey, whether it's the German channel or the 2 German channels or the English speaking channel. I love the stories I had the chance to hear. Man, I don't know what else to say. It's great time to be alive. Like I said, it's great time to be alive.